I think I'm not going to start with the hey, welcome everybody, because they're already welcomed, and I have the music there that I was going to bring in. So
Should just tell them that. That'd be funny.
tell them
Yeah,
like,
that'd be a
Yeah,
good intro.
yeah.
I would say welcome, but you kind of get the gist of the music, so yeah.
yeah.
You're already welcome, so you're thanked.
And welcome back to another episode of the Sleepwalkers podcast. This is your host, Chris, Ken, and Jared.
Hello.
Yo,
And tonight we are joined with our special guest, Michaela.
Hi.
And we are going to have a special episode for you tonight. We are going to be talking about some space-themed topics. I'll give you a little bit of what we're going to be going over. We're going to be talking about the Drake equation. We're going to be going over the Fermi Paradox, the Great Filter, and some theories into reasons why we could be the only civilization, or why we haven't reached out to anybody or had contact with anybody. So I'll go ahead and start this off. So tonight we're talking about the Drake equation, and the Drake equation is an argument that is used to estimate the total number of extraterrestrial civilizations in the Milky Way. The equation was first proposed in 1961 by Dr. Frank Drake to present at the meeting for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, aka SETI. He came up with the equation that basically allows us to make an estimate of intelligent advanced civilizations in the universe by multiplying 7 quantities related to the prevalence of life. Drake himself explained that it was a simple formula that could be likened similar to how someone might estimate the number of students at a university. By considering the new number of students entering each year and multiplying that by the average number of students, by multiplying that by the average number of years that student will most likely spend at the school, which should provide a good estimate on the total number of undergrad students. The Drake equation is constructed with similar logic. The first 6 terms, when multiplied together, yield the average number of new technologically transmitting societies that come online in the Milky Way each year. And there's actually, as the name implies, there's an equation to it. I'm actually going to hand this over to our special guest. Would you prefer I called you Mickey during the show or Michaela?
Either is fine. Whatever's easier.
Okay, I'm going to stick with Michaela.
Okay.
And if I blot your name again, Ken can come.
Yeah.
And Ken can come flatten my tires. He knows where I park. Cool.
It'll
So
just seem like she's like we don't know her, like she's a special guest. Because like I can't even get her name. I don't even know her.
By the end, he'll be calling me Michelle.
I know. I wish your like intro was the "Oh, Mickey, you're so fun, you're so fun, you blow my mind, hey Mickey, oh."
That'd
Okay,
be
let's do
funny.
this.
That would be funny.
Change your name every time.
it's just something different every time somebody
Yeah,
says
that'd be
something.
so
They're like,
funny.
"Who is that?"
Say
At
it
the
in
end,
different
like-
accents. Michelle.
I'm gonna pass over the Drake equation over to Michaela so that she can better explain the terms of it, the explanation of it. That way I don't sound like a complete, like I don't know exactly what I'm talking about, because I kind of don't, but it is a very interesting topic, and I'm gonna switch it over to Michaela now. So Michaela, can you better explain to everyone exactly the equation?
Yeah, sure. So there are 7 variables that get multiplied together. So you can solve for the 8th variable is n. N is really, again, what you're solving for. It stands for the number of civilizations in our galaxy, the Milky Way. So the 8th variable that you're solving for is n, which stands for basically the average or the estimated number of alien civilizations in our galaxy, in the Milky Way. So I can step through the 7 variables that make up the rest of the Drake equation. So the first one is R star, and that variable stands for the average rate of star formation every year in our galaxy. NASA and the European Space Agency are fairly confident that roughly 7 stars like our sun are born every year in the Milky Way. So we have a good sense of what that variable is. The second variable is F sub P, which stands for basically of those 7 stars that get born each year, what fraction of those have planets that surround them similar to our solar system? So F sub P, we have a pretty good sense that for stars that look like our sun, anywhere from 20 to 60% of those stars have planets that surround them, orbit them. So we can kind of guess that maybe half, we can just ballpark and say half of the 7 stars born each year have a planetary system around them. The next variable is N sub E, and that stands for the average number of those planets that surround stars in the Milky Way could support life. So they have water or some kind of atmosphere around them. That one's much harder for us to know. And the next variable is F sub L, and that stands for the fraction of those planets that could support life that actually do develop life. And obviously, it's an unknowable variable for us at this point. But it leads to the next variable, which is F sub I. So when we think of the fraction of planets that actually do develop life, what's the fraction of those that develop intelligent life? So not just, single-celled amoebas or something, but life that evolves into something similar to humans or something that's capable of higher thought, of thinking outside of their immediate surroundings. And that could be aware of the fact that they're on a planet and that their planet orbits their sun and that there might be other people like them out there. That's a really critical variable. Let's see, the next variable is F sub C. And that one stands for the fraction of those intelligent. So F sub C stands for the fraction of those planets that do develop intelligent life. Basically, what's the percentage that could develop technology that could be detected by other civilizations elsewhere in the galaxy? And so, from that's obviously, from a human perspective, our way of communicating is really by sending signals into space. So we would expect a similar civilization that develops elsewhere to also be able to communicate with electromagnetic signals of some kind, either light or radio waves. And the last variable is L, which simply stands for the expected lifetime of that civilization. So if they're only around for 100 years, obviously our window for finding them is very small and could have passed. But if their civilization either is around for a very long time or their technology continues to be detectable, then that gives us a much higher chance of finding them. I actually had plugged in some kind of fake numbers. So, a lot of those variables are totally unknowable to us right now, but just kind of guessing what each one could be. That's probably wrong. I went ahead and tried to solve it, and I came up with N equals to 23. So it's kind of fun to think about that, in the Milky Way galaxy, with just the variables I chose, there could be 23 other civilizations out there. It's kind of fun.
So planets
with intelligent life
yeah.
that can communicate.
23 planets that are in the habitable zone that could possibly harbor life. That is just, that number alone is incredible if you think about it, because that is 23 chances that we could have. I know those were numbers that you estimated and plugged into this equation, but just that fact alone, that we have that 23 chances to discover life in other planets. And we're going to get a little into that a bit later about the different type of planets and, well, reasons for life on other planets, things like that. So thank you so much for explaining the Drake equation for us, because I would have made a total mess of that and just ran all over myself.
Oh, I forgot. I guess just one last thing to mention too. So what I think is kind of cool about the Drake equation is, as long as none of those variables are zero, you'll be able to solve it with something that's a non-zero, that has a non-zero answer. So basically, as long as there's any number of stars being born that have any number of planets around them, and as long as even one of them could support life, develops intelligent life, as long as none of those variables are zero, then there is definitely, almost certainly, a chance of other intelligent civilizations being out there.
And can you imagine just the creation of our planet, the creation of our species on this planet? I could only imagine what those numbers would have been for our chances to be exactly where we are today. And we don't know, like you said, as long as those numbers aren't zero, right? And I mean, how likely do you think the chances would be zero for another planet?
Yeah, I think the trickiest variable would be, or like the most critical one, is the fraction of planets that develop either life or intelligent life. I guess either of those variables are really key. So as long as those ones aren't zero, we're there's hope of finding some other people out there.
Ken, in your opinion, how likely do you think that the Drake equation could solve or could give us some type of answer that there is other life on planets? Do you think it's credible or?
Yeah, I think it's credible. I mean, it's all scienced out, so there's a lot of variables. There's a lot of options, and there's a lot of signs that people have seen things already. So
And Jared, in your opinion, do you think that the Drake equation gives a good explanation on the possibility of other planet without knowing it for sure, or do you think it's just some number that Dr. Drake created in order to entertain his team?
I like to play devil's advocate. I think that there is a huge possibility because I mean, it's kind of like we're living in Whoville, where Horton hears a who, to where we're just so small in such a huge and vast area that is bigger than any of us can actually comprehend on an actual physical scale. So I think that on one side of me it is very likely, and on the other side, I mean, me personally, I've never had an encounter with a different worldly being as of yet. But considering how vast our our spaces, and considering that this guy is a lot smarter than I am and he actually can create equations, I'm not going to doubt it. I'm going to be a believer on this one. I'm a believer, not a believer, a believer. All right, people.
And that's
All
important
right.
to have these days. So the reason I bring up these questions, and I could sure everybody could respect that, is there's actually a lot of controversy that has surrounded the Drake equation for years, and it's still ongoing by many prominent scientists. And whether that, how likely it is beyond our scope, more in Michaela's scope, but far beyond ours here at Sleepwalker. So that's why we brought in the expert today. So that kind of brings us into our next topic, which we're going to be talking about the Fermi paradox, and the theories and the principles of the Drake equation is closely related to the Fermi paradox. So I'll go to explain it a bit. The Fermi paradox is the conflict between the lack of clear, obvious evidence for extraterrestrial life and various high estimates for their existence. Just like Ken was explaining, we kind of there's possible signs out there for extraterrestrial life. So it was first started with physicist Enrico Fermi in 1950 while at lunch with his colleagues, where they were discussing the same topic of the possibility of intelligent species or intelligent life on other planets. And he was quoted as saying the famous quote goes, "Where is everybody?" Meaning, where is the rest of the life out there? Now, the quote's not exactly, it's uncertain exactly what he said, but the basic meaning of it was, where is everybody at? And I actually heard, this is a fun fact, and I don't know how true this is, but this famous physicist was actually at Los Alamos Laboratory when he said this, which is right in our backyard. And if it is, that's fascinating because there's just so much stuff that happens in New Mexico. Like if you watch any of our YouTube channels, Ken goes deeply into this, and it's wild. So obviously the idea behind the question is pretty simple and it's clear. If there is other intelligent life in the universe, then where are they? The first argument to the Fermi paradox is just the sheer scale of the universe, how massive it is. It's just unimaginable in our processors how big it truly is, and that's only in the observable universe that we've actually seen everything. So surely there must be other forms of intelligent life given our creation. If our standard record is true, how we came into existence, then surely it must be true on other planets. The second argument is, given the probability of life, then the chances of intelligent life forming independently would be very likely. And like I mentioned, it's just the simple fact that we are here is, and I believe they've observed, please correct me if I'm wrong, Michaela, I believe they've observed microorganisms on rocks that have entered our atmosphere.
I hadn't heard that, but I heard that they've seen a specific, maybe it's methane, a specific type of gas in the atmosphere of Venus, which is really perplexing because and it's only produced, or we've only seen it produced in Earth's atmosphere by living organisms. So there are definitely some things that we're finding that seem to support the existence of other, even like microorganisms, like you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So just as you were saying, the basic building blocks of life could be observed on other planets, which would give total credence to these great theories. So that kind of leads us into like our next subject, which is the Great Filter and what we've kind of been hinting at at the start of this episode. So it's basically a possible solution to the Fermi paradox, and it pretty much states that intelligent life must take many critical steps or hurdles in order to develop into what we would consider, intelligent life. I don't think we would be considered intelligent life. We're just life at this point. So I think we'll get into that a little bit further, but and I'll go through the first steps of it. So bear with me here. The first hurdle must be highly improbable and is supposed to be so incredibly high that it is almost impossible for species to get past it. And this would prevent the evolution of species in the universe from developing into highly advanced civilizations such as type 1, 2, and 3 civilizations. And I'll go into those a little bit later in the episode. The steps that lead to the Great Filter are things such as a planet capable of harboring life must form in a star's habitable zone. Life itself must develop on that planet. Those life forms must be able to reproduce using such molecules as DNA and RNA, must have simple cells. Prokaryotes must evolve into more complex cells, eukaryotes, and I apologize if I mispronounce those. I'm not the greatest with names. Multicellular organisms must develop. Sexual reproduction, which greatly increases genetic diversity, must take hold. Complex organisms capable of using tools must evolve. These organisms must create advanced technology needed for space colonization, kind of roughly where we are at today. The spacefaring species must go on to colonize other worlds and star systems while avoiding destroying itself, which might probably be our great filter or a great hurdle that we have to overcome. Some scientists believe that humanity may not be past this significant hurdle, which prevents species from continuous evolving. Scientists believe that if humanity receives a signal from an advanced technological species that humanity may have not yet reached a significant hurdle event yet, humanity is not entirely considered a type 1 civilization, as we have not harnessed all our energy resources of the earth entirely or efficiently. Other scientists believe that we have already passed several hurdles in our past, and this great filter could be behind us in our evolutionary history. And some believe that we may be that first advanced civilization in the history of the universe. So with everything said, I'm going to go and bring this over to our subject matter expert for the night. Michaela, as far as the Fermi paradox goes, do you have anything that you would like to add for the Fermi paradox?
Yeah, I guess my thoughts on the Fermi paradox are really that I feel like a major reason why we wouldn't have heard from an intelligent civilization, if one exists elsewhere, is that space is huge. It's really almost inconceivable how big it is. It's really hard to grasp the size. And even our entire solar system that we're in is two light years across. So traveling at the speed of light, a photon takes 2 years to go from one side of our solar system to the other. And the Milky Way galaxy, just focusing there, because the Drake equation really earlier, that speaks to the Milky Way specifically. So just ignoring the rest of the universe for now. In the Milky Way galaxy, we originally thought it was 100 to 200,000 light years across. And I think a year or two ago, we discovered we were only seeing visible matter, and it's actually surrounded by dark matter. And basically, it's 2 million light years across. And so we were way off. And so our galaxy is gigantic. And so hypothetically, if there were, let's say, 23 civilizations in our Milky Way galaxy, unless they're situated super close by us, it would take hundreds of thousands, if not, a million light years for our messages to reach another civilization. So when we think of, let's say, the Andromeda galaxy, that's 2 million light years away, they have really good looking multiple habitable planets there. There could be a total civilization there right now. There could be a really busy New York City style metropolis, and people are living there, looking out at space, wondering where other civilizations are. They could point their version of a telescope at Earth, and what they would see is Earth 2 million years ago. So they wouldn't even see us. And obviously, when we look at Andromeda, we don't see any civilization because the picture that we're getting right now is from 2 million years ago, because that's how long it took the light to reach us. So I feel like distance, the size of space, is probably the reason why we haven't and may not hear from other alien civilizations unless they're on really nearby planets. Like Proxima B is only four and a half ish light years away from us. So again, unless these civilizations are within 100 light years or less, 200 light years or less, it's just, that's the big challenge, is the distance.
So just the sheer vastness of space. We, like you said, they're millions of light years away, and we just are looking at them from 2 million years ago, or
Yeah.
possibly further, and they could have already been developed. We're just looking at an old picture, and by the time we catch up to it, they might already be way past that point. And vice versa, if they're looking at us, they might be seeing dinosaurs, and then before you know it, we're surrounding their planet because we found oil on it. So Jared, you still with us, man?
I'm still here, alive and listening.
I love it. So I'm going to start off with you. In your opinion, just the sheer vastness of space, do you think that is just our biggest hindrance for us seeing from discovering other planets, or what's your thoughts on this?
In my honest opinion, I mean, Mickey's the expert, so I'm gonna go with what she says. But I think that in order for us to really be able to see this as somehow breaking that gap, bridging the gap between like she said, light years, if I'm correct, right? And I really do. I mean, I would actually be pretty shocked if Earth, out of the vastness of the universe, that Earth is the only planet that somehow has something like this. I mean, there's probably another podcast with people that look similar to us and the same names, just living in a different multiverse. 200 light years away, you never know. I truly believe that. I believe that. I mean, we live in a society in our region and in our country that we're supposed to believe that this was the only one thing in the world, but I mean, kind of science shows differently, right? So why not be optimistic that there's so many different life forms, and who knows, maybe someday we'll crack the barrier to where we don't have to worry about light years in between planets. We'll be able to actually transport directly, and see and observe different universes, different vast civilizations, different types of civilizations, how other planets had similar upbringings, but it was so different because one thing different happened in their history that completely shaped how they developed as a world, and that's just all I'm gonna say. I sound very ignorant because I am very ignorant on this subject, but did my best.
Well, that was great, Jared. Thank you for sharing your input. And no worries about that, because even the people that have studied this for years, there could be a missing piece that they don't even see, or like Michaela said, there could be a filter that we're looking through trying to see something. And so that being said, there's actually several theories that I wanted to go over with you guys, and I'm actually going to start off with Ken for his thoughts on this first one. So Ken, one of the theories for this Fermi paradox is actually called the island theory, and it basically means so there's this great story about thought to be uninhabited island, and when they went to go visit it, there was a tribe that was actually living there, and they actually I believe, attacked the plane, is how the story goes. And I'm sure somebody, if you've heard of this or seen this, please let us know in the comments. I can't think of the name top of my head, this island. So basically, that's the theory of the island theory, is that there are planets out there that are harboring life or intelligent life, and they simply have chosen to not share themselves with the rest of the universe, meaning they understand the dangers of it, and they understand the reality of if they were ever found, they could just simply be a hostile takeover. Maybe they possibly themselves have seen other planets that this occurred to. So do you think that do you think there's possibility that there's planets out there that are testing this island theory, just simply staying away on purpose?
Yeah, I think the island theory. There was a young man that was kind of wanted to be a reporter, and he was visiting the island, and he'd get a little bit closer, and I think they were throwing spears at him, and I think he ended up getting on the island eventually, and I think they killed him. But then they had another picture of a bunch of I don't know if they're arrows or spears, but they're sticking in the bottom of like a seaplane as it drove off because it was trying to get over and check it out. But yeah, they don't want to be part of what we got going on because it ain't all good. But I think when I heard Michaela talking about the fourth dimension a while back, I don't know, I think that's really interesting. With we could have people watching us; they could be closer than we think, and we just aren't intelligent enough to know what to look for, or we don't understand that there is the fourth dimension. And I don't know, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
That
Yeah, there
theory.
could be a fourth dimension person looking over your shoulder right now. That's the example I always use. And you would have no way of knowing because you don't have access to that fourth dimension. So you literally can't see it or conceive of it. It's pretty wild.
That is, and isn't there like a perfect example from what we do know is there's frequencies, right, that only little kids can hear, or like animals can hear,
Mhm.
Yeah,
stuff
like
like that.
1%. Yeah.
Mhm.
And like you're mentioning, Ken, there's a possibility that there's like a sense that we don't know about that can tune into these
Yeah.
highly high range, whatever you want to call it, and we just can't access it right now.
And
That's actually
also, we haven't really been sending signals that long in the big picture. What, from the 50s or 60s?
Yeah.
It hasn't been that long.
50s and 60s unintentionally. The first time they put out a real actual message intentionally into space was only in the 70s.
Yeah, the interstellar. What did I put? The message board. So we should totally do. I know we always come when we're doing these things. We say we should do an episode on, but we really should do an episode on this. So that was Drake and Carl Sagan that put that message board out, and we should totally do a segment on that. It's super cool.
Yeah, definitely. We can definitely do that whenever you guys want to. Just let me know, however you want to do it.
Yeah. So I mean, you just haven't been reaching out that long.
Is
You'll,
that related to the forgive me if I butcher this, the Sputnik?
Sputnik.
That's Sputnik, yeah, and how it throws transmittable signals that they were unknown at the time, right?
well, they have a whole. It has like different like zeros and ones, and the frequencies. There's just the two of them, the two different notes, and they all mean something on this board. And they they have multiple ways that they could communicate if intelligent beings on the other end would hear this or see it. They would understand what we're trying to say. It has like in our DNA makeup, just the picture of man. I can't remember everything that it has, but we should get into it more with another episode.
Yeah, let's do it. And can I add like a quick little fun note?
Hmm?
Out of all the movies in the world that are scientific, the one movie that actually got the fourth dimension correct is Monsters Inc.
The closet.
Yeah, that is the only movie that has ever accurately depicted the fourth dimension. Just opening a door to a different dimension and stepping through that dimension.
Yeah.
So that's like a really cool tidbit. I just wanted to throw that in there because all-time favorite kid movie. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
That's
So using that example, right? We're like the parents, I guess, in that movie. can't possibly conceive of being able to open your closet and enter into this monster world, right? Where like that's nonsense. It's impossible because I know when I open the closet, there's just the back of the closet. But yeah, I think that's a really good analogy.
Yeah, yeah. I really enjoy that one.
Absolutely. And just how there is, I know I always dive back into my conspiracy bag, but just how there's always subliminal messages in everyday movies. And like I've mentioned in our last podcast, we're so desensitized that we just see it and we don't think about it. But Jared might have just solved everything right there just by paying attention to the movie.
Mhm.
How many times have you watched it, Jared? Be honest with us.
Bro, I don't want to embarrass myself, but I'm a seasoned vet, dude.
So like 15.
All right, we'll go with that number.
That's a safe number.
And also one other thing is, if other solar systems are throwing out stars that are similar to the sun, I've noticed the literature on the DNA, the RNA. Obviously mRNA has to be involved in that as well, but considering these other universes are spitting out stars that are similar to the sun is the best thing for growth, like i.e. photosynthesis. How does that, if anyone knows, how does that tie in? Because like I get the intelligible, but like, even though plants, they're super intelligent. Like there's literature to prove that, and they live off of photosynthesis. And if life can't grow on Earth without the sun in the stars that replicate the sun or are identical to the sun in these other universes surrounding these planets, or with the planets orbiting around it, there has to be growth in that aspect as well. When you have photosynthesis, there obviously has to be life.
That's a good point. And I would say, so I mean, in the Great Filter, like the list of criteria, I mean, they're making a huge assumption that all life would be based with like, on similar building blocks as ours. But even if that is true, to your point, humans share some of the same like genetic makeup as trees, and we can't talk to a tree or even communicate with it really in much of any way, other than taking care of it. And I know people talk to their plants, and there's like some, I guess, research that says plants are happier, thrive when you do nurture them. But even when we look at parakeets, you share that 70% of your DNA with a parakeet, and you can almost sort of try to communicate with it, train it a little bit. And you share over 90% of your DNA with an orangutan. And you can teach an orangutan sign language up to, the same level as, let's say, a 3 to 6 year old human child. But so it's kind of interesting to think, even going with the Great Filter, if life did evolve very similarly to ours, we share over 90% of our DNA with certain apes, and we can't really have a conversation or explain to them what outer space is. And so if life did evolve, let's say there are plant people on other planets, would they have even developed electromagnetic based technology to communicate? It's tricky to say.
That in itself is such a head trip, just thinking about the possibility of something not using our foundational building blocks. Like I keep going back to what Ken mentioned, but it's so true that the fact that there could be something watching us and we can't perceive it because it doesn't share what we perceive as reality. Oh, I thought you were gonna share something. Um, so that kind of I'm gonna go ahead and move on to our next theory, and Michaela, I'm actually going to bring this one up with you because I'm curious of what you think. And it kind of pertains a little bit to what we're talking about, sort of. So I'll kind of tie it in there. So one of the next theories for the Fermi paradox is they call it the planetarium theory or the fishbowl theory, which basically implies that we have already been visited by aliens. In fact, we're living in a simulated environment that was created by aliens, which we call them aliens, but it could be artificial intelligence. It could be just something that grew with different fundamentals than we did. It doesn't share probably doesn't share thoughts. Who knows? But it just could communicate through circuits. We don't know, which is why we always tend to lean towards technology for human theories. So, in your opinion, Michaela, how likely do you think this theory is that we are in some type of environment that's been created by some type of artificial intelligence?
Yeah. So I guess In terms of being visited by aliens, I feel like unless again they came from a planet that is physically near our solar system, I don't know it unless they had greatly advanced technology or they had developed some way to travel closer to the speed of light without dying. Then I think I could maybe get on board with that. But I think that, again, the distance that it would take for anyone to visit us is the same challenge that we face going outward. Now, the simulation piece, I don't know, I guess like if we're thinking of kind of like a terrarium type simulation where they bought us from a pet store and stuck us in like a little environment versus a computer simulation, like where none of this is real and we're on a hard drive of some alien computer. I guess it depends on what you mean by simulation. But I think in either of those scenarios, I think it's easier for me to get on board with our reality being fake or devised in an alien's reality than it is for an alien to travel to Earth and mess with us. So I don't know. I guess I have mixed feelings on it. I think it's possible. So hypothetically, let's say aliens had computers and this is all like a computer simulation or a video game. Um, I think that could. I mean, there's no evidence to say that's not true, but I think the flip side is there's no evidence to say it is true. So I kind of feel a little neutral, but if I take off like a science hat and just put on a like what do I think hat, I would say I feel it's unlikely because I mean, obviously I'm coming at this from having an entire, I was born, I had an entire childhood and a life. I've had all these life experiences and so have billions of other people on this planet. And so the computing power to generate unique experiences for multiple billions of individuals is that would be computationally expensive, as they call it in the industry, meaning like they would have to develop some kind of supercomputing technology to even handle that. And in terms of a terrarium, I feel like if you had a fishbowl that was like overpopulated with fish and the bowl was getting disgusting, you would probably get a separate bowl and take some of those fish out. And we haven't seen any evidence of that, of like Africa being lifted up and moved out of our reality. So I guess I feel like there's not enough evidence to give me any kind of sense that that's happening.
Definitely. And just to play into that a little bit, as far as your great analogy for the whole fishbowl, and we haven't seen any type of reason why we would see evidence for that. There is a lot of theories dating back to like the ancient alien theory, where there's been several, I don't know how you want to call it, several lifespans of human beings on planet Earth, meaning there's been older civilizations that have possibly lived here a long time ago, which could have been in the first iteration of their theory. We could be like, I believe there's some ancient cultures that I believe were like the 10th or the 7th iteration of their experiment. But that could be totally, it could just be a natural species die off like they normally do, and we could have not survived, and few that did continue to thrive. But that's a whole nother argument in itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring this next one over to Jared. So Jared, there's another theory to the Fermi paradox, and it's actually called the dark force theory. And what this theory basically entails is that aliens are already here. And a lot of people might better relate this to the ancient alien theory, that they either have already visited us or are still here. We can't see them. What's your thoughts on this?
It's a definitely a hard thing to think about. I think part of that theory is like I'm gonna play devil's advocate. Part of it can make sense to me. I mean, the universe is so vast, obviously, but if they're living among us, there has to be an agenda. They're not gonna live among us just, in my opinion, this is all opinionated. In my opinion, they're not gonna live among us just to observe. If they're gonna live among us, they're gonna transpire to either make things go in ways that they've seen humanity destroy itself or to work towards what their goal is. And that's kind of how I see it. And like I said, I like to play devil's advocate, and another part of it is, you know, who I want to like. I wonder who came up with this theory. Are they borderline paranoid that there's people living among them and they just can't accept that life is life and there's unexplained things that happen? I because that's kind of a freaky thing to think about, right? Like you and I can be sitting there having a conversation and we look at each other and there's that thought in my head, what if he's an extraterrestrial? You know what I mean?
I thought about that a lot
And
about myself.
yeah, yeah. Like you look at people and you're like, what if? And so, in my opinion, some of the things in the media can kind of scare you and make certain make some people think that, and it might be true. I don't know, but I like to play devil's advocate, and if they are among us, I think that they would either make themselves known, or if they aren't making themselves known, then there's a higher agenda to it, and that's just my take on it. Because I'm crazy, and this is a podcast.
No, that was great. Thank you for sharing that. Ken, thoughts? Are they already here? Have they already visited us? What do you think?
I think so. Like I said before about the pyramids, we were talking about that before. Like the precision cuts.
Elaborate,
Like
please.
document. What's that?
Elaborate for us, please.
Oh yeah, there's been like documents on how incredibly hard it is to make those precise cuts that were made with some of the structures, like the pyramids. A really popular one, and they tried to replicate it, and it was really hard with modern tech to even replicate it. So it was like not just getting the materials there, but actually building it up, as high as they are. And so, I mean, who taught people how to do that a long time ago? Somebody had to show them or help them with tools. So there's that I don't know, that's kind of interesting to think about. And another one is there could already be alien societies, but they're not up in the air where we usually look. They could be in the oceans because we don't really know much about what could be in there. And there has been a lot of reports on strange lights going into water in certain areas, like multiple times. So I don't know. Those are just fun things to think about too.
Right. And one story that I always think about, and I tell this all the time, is there's actually Christopher Columbus, before he discovered the Americas, he actually wrote in, I believe, his journal or his captain logs. I'm not really sure which one is. I believe it was the night or the day before that they discovered the Americas that he witnessed an orb dropping in and out of the ocean. And I believe it was the next day that they found the Americas. So absolutely. And I think I've told you this before, is there's actually a lake, I believe in somewhere in South America. I want to say Peru. I think it's called Lake Titicaca.
Titibank.
Yeah. And the locals of that region actually report.
Wait, where at?
I want to say Peru. The lake is called Titicaca.
Okay.
That's the name of the lake. Google it. Just be careful about
I don't
what results
want
you're gonna find.
I don't want
Yeah.
my work to look at my Google searches and be like, was he looking up? I'll
Right?
make sure to put Peru after it.
Yeah, there you go. Something. Or just put South America, because I'm not exactly sure the region it's at, but a lot of the locals report the same thing. And I actually like what you said, Ken, is we don't know what could be under the oceans because we haven't explored it, right?
Mhm.
And that's actually terrifying. There could be entire civilizations down there. What's that? What was Jar Jar Binks thing? They had like a whole thing underneath. You know what I mean? Could be the same thing. We don't know. I mean, who knows? And
Yeah.
that's why we never see them, because obviously they're not going to be in a spaceship hovering in outer space. They're going to be in the oceans. That's why they just disappear so quickly. And I believe actually recently the video that was released from from the Navy pilots, where they were observing, I believe, the Tic Tacs, whatever you want to call them, and they were actually diving into the ocean. So that's something to think about itself. And I think I actually just read about this the other day. Is there's giant cave system that they discovered in, I believe, China. No, I'm sorry, It was in between Vietnam and Laos, and it's like 6 miles long. It has the capability of harboring, I believe they said you could stick like the Empire State Building in there, and it has its own ecosystem. So, and that was just discovered in 1995, and that's just one example of possibilities of.
Or portals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in
That's
the
a
water or up above.
that's a great one. Just the portals themselves, entering into that fourth, fifth, sixth dimension. I mean, I kind of wanted to go into the multiverse theory, but Michaela talked us out of it because that is just a beast in itself, and we would be here for a while. And yeah, we would just sound. I know myself. I won't speak for everybody else. I would sound like a complete fool just trying to talk about it. So, Michaela, in your opinion, do you believe that aliens have already visited us? The ancient alien theories. Do you think they're still here watching us?
So I guess fundamentally, I just can't get over how it would just be so challenging for them to travel to Earth from pretty much anywhere else. But unless they developed, I guess, like I mentioned earlier, if an alien civilization was able to travel, if an alien civilization was able to travel at or near the speed of light, or if they harness some kind of different type of matter, like tachyons are they're theoretical particles that move faster than the speed of light. So hypothetically, that could be, some way to get around another civilization's ability to travel a long distance. So personally, I have a really hard time getting over that when I think of aliens coming to Earth. But I think, I tell this story all the time. Ken watches documentaries on really creepy and scary things, and then he falls asleep. So I'm stuck watching the rest of it. And I've learned a lot of things about scary, like paranormal stuff. And one documentary he fell asleep to was about ancient, like the pyramids, actually. And a pyramid had been like a new one had been discovered, and when they were excavating it, they found some like funky shaft that was like they thought maybe it was an air vent or a crawl space or something. And the shaft went basically like up at a strange angle, and they figured no one could actually climb that. It was too steep, and it didn't really vent. I mean, they had other air vents, and it didn't look anything like those. And they're really stumped. They hadn't seen this before in other pyramids, and they're struggling to figure out what the purpose of this was, because it was obviously designed to be there. And they found out when during some like satellite mission that was taking photographs of northern Africa, they found out that under like certain weather conditions in a specific time of year, gases built up in the shaft and basically shot a beam of light straight up into space, and you could only see it from the satellite. And I found that to be pretty compelling, because that's weird. And I don't know why they would have built a shaft just to shoot a beam of light upwards. I know they had like like the god of sun, Ra, like they were already aware of the stars. And a lot of scientists feel like they were aware that Earth was actually orbiting the sun. But I don't know, it just seemed compelling enough that even if they had developed that to honor their sun god, it just seemed like a leap or an advancement in pyramid building technology of the era, right? They hadn't done that before, and suddenly they started doing it. So
Yeah, and just the fact that they had built this chamber that could only be the purpose of it can only be seen from a satellite. And if you think about it from that perspective, if you look at the Nazca lions in Peru, which are giant, some are shaped like animals. I think one of them is like a monkey or something, but from the ground they look like giant lions, but from the sky they're obviously creatures. So could they possibly be the way to signal something, and I know we brought this up in our missing 411 podcast with the whole energy grid line stuff like that. And if the pyramids are on one of these energy grid lines, could that have been some type of signal that generated massive amounts of energy that was able to transmit something deep into space? We don't know. I know that a lot of the pyramids, and there's a lot of pyramid structures. The ones that I can think of the top of my head, the best for sure is the Mayan temples, and then you have the Egyptian pyramids, and they are actually in alignment with a certain star system. I can't remember which one it was, but they're pretty much exactly aligned. Coordinates are very similar. So that's actually an interesting theory.
It just made me think it maybe was some kind of a compass if you're looking at multiple structures, or maybe it's a marker of some kind. So when someone wants to come back and visit, they are able to find the exact spot they wanted to go to. So
kind of like kind of like tying a piece of string on a tree so that you know your way back. Jared, you got anything to share on that one further?
Other than the Peru thing, I ain't got nothing.
Cool. So I'll bring it into like our last theory. The last theory of the Fermi paradox actually talks about the rare earth hypothesis, and it goes on to state that we are just simply alone in the universe. We are the only ones that have passed the great filter. We're the only ones that have developed far enough to be able to try to reach out to other civilizations. And as we've already discussed in this episode, we're probably looking at very old star systems, and they could probably be far beyond that. And I believe the late, was he a physicist or scientist, Stephen Hawking?
Physicist, astrophysicist.
Astro, the late astrophysicist Stephen Hawking. I think he actually warned against trying to reach out to other planets. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think Elon was starting to. I saw something the other day where he was, for whatever reason, he was going to tell people Stephen's theory behind all of that. I don't know why it was him, but maybe because he is an alien. But yeah, I was could look into that for fun.
Right, and that's actually that's kind of terrifying to think about. It is somebody could think like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be doing this right now, at least not until we can fully grasp ourselves. And that there's actually another theory out there. That's why people haven't really, no civilizations try to reach out to us, because we're pretty much like so low on the evolutionary scale that they wouldn't really waste their time just even trying to communicate to us. It'd be like us trying to explain to a squirrel why the fundamentals of our society. The squirrel will just look at us like, you gonna give me food or what, you know? And same theory is that, you know, they could already be there. We don't have no idea what we're looking at, or, you know, things in that nature. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave it off with part two. Does anybody have anything else they want to share into this? Any final thoughts?
Good stuff, though.
Cool.
Good content. Good content.
Cool, man. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it off with this quote. And I apologize, I do not know the author of this quote. And it states that we are either alone in the universe or we are not, and both are equally terrifying. So we may discover it someday soon. So I just wanted to thank all of our listeners for joining us on this special episode. We wanted to thank our special guest for joining us, Michaela. Thank you very much. We hope to have you on future episodes. Your input was very valuable, and you saved us from sounding like fools. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.